It's entirely possible that he was unwillingly kept in this home without really any escape himself.
It's entirely possible he was kept in that house against his will, with no real way out. You already know what I'm about to say. The system that's supposed to protect the vulnerable looks the other way until it's too late. A last-minute hearing just shook up the Ohio House of Horrors case, and what came out of that courtroom only raises harder questions.
New charges for the 4 Siders family members found in a home with 16 children. We're looking at the charges related to those children who've been part of a secret investigation before and what could happen to their grandparents. As the father of the 16 children appears in court for the first time in weeks. I'm Anjanette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. The legal trouble for 4 members of the Siders family is far from over. For 2 of the 4, the legal jeopardy has gotten much worse. For the other 2, it's improved just slightly. These developments came after the Venton County grand jury met and returned indictments against Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders for sexual battery and unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. The charges are not related to allegations involving their own children. Gary and Elizabeth were also indicted on 19 counts of child endangering, ranging from second-degree felonies to third-degree felonies and some misdemeanor counts.
Legal trouble for 4 members of the Siders family isn't over. It's gotten worse for 2 of them, and slightly better for the other 2. A Venton County grand jury indicted Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders on sexual battery and unlawful sexual conduct with a minor, charges not even tied to their own children. They were also indicted on 19 counts of child endangering, ranging from second-degree felonies to misdemeanors. Today, Gary Jr. pleaded not guilty to all charges, including the new sex crimes, and the judge raised his bail from $300,000 to $550,000.
Legal situation is incredibly serious, even if the child endangering charges are reduced just slightly. And today, Gary Siders Jr. appeared in court in Venton County for a last-minute hearing. He pleaded not guilty to all charges, including the new sex crimes charges he faces. Gary Jr.'s attorney is challenging his mental competency. Judge Rogers raised his bail from $300,000 to $550,000.
His attorney is now challenging his mental competency, and the focus is shifting to someone else, his parents, Gary Senior and Christina Siders. They still face child endangering charges, but at reduced levels. Gary Senior originally faced 16 second-degree felony counts. Now he faces 10 third-degree felonies and 6 misdemeanors. Christina faces 19 counts, 2 F2S, 10 F3S, 7 misdemeanors.
Gary Jr.'s parents, Gary Sr. and Christina Siders, still face child endangering charges, but the level of charges they face has been reduced. Both elder Siders had faced 16 counts of child endangering, felonies of the second degree, when they were arrested, but now Gary Sr. faces 16 counts, 10 felonies of the third degree, and 6 counts are now misdemeanors. His wife, Christina Siders, faces 19 counts of child endangering, 2 F2s, 10 F3s, and 7 misdemeanors. According to the indictment, the alleged abuse and neglect took place from June 2022 through June of 2026. This is still...
The alleged abuse and neglect spanned June 2022 through June 2026. The grandparents had lived with their son, daughter-in-law, and all 16 children before the move to Venton County, and Children's Services was involved back then, though Gary Sr. wasn't part of that earlier investigation. The children removed from the home are now in therapeutic foster care, and the county is seeking permanent custody, meaning Gary Jr. and Elizabeth are never getting them back.
A very serious situation, no doubt, but the elder Siders, they lived with their son and daughter-in-law and the children prior to their move to Venton County, and Children's Services was involved with them then, although Gary Sr. didn't appear to be a part of that investigation. The children pulled from the house on Omer Street. They're now in therapeutic foster care, thank goodness, and Venton County is seeking permanent custody of the 16 children. That means the kids were in bad shape, and they need a lot of help. And it also means if the...
Back in 2020 and 2021, when there were only 9 Siders children, Ohio considered taking custody, but couldn't. According to court records, So the court granted Children's Services protective supervision instead, letting a caseworker help the parents complete a case plan and keep their kids. They were warned that a finding of abuse or neglect could still lead to an order of temporary, or even permanent, custody.
County is successful in its bid for permanent custody. Gary Jr. and Elizabeth, they're never getting the kids back. Back in 2020 and 2021, the state of Ohio, they planned to take custody of the 9 Siders children. There were only 9 then, but removing them wasn't an option at that time, according to court records. So the court granted Children's Services request for protective supervision, which allowed a caseworker to help Gary Jr. and Elizabeth complete a case plan and keep their children. Gary Jr. and Elizabeth received a notice that stated, an adjudication of abuse, neglect, or dependency may result in an order of temporary custody. An order of temporary custody will cause the removal of a child from the legal custody of the parent until the court terminates the order of temporary custody or permanently divests them of their parental rights. When a complaint contains a prayer or request for permanent custody of a neglected or dependent child, the parents of said child are hereby notified that the granting of such permanent custody takes from the natural or adoptive parents all rights, duties, and obligations of a parent, including the right to consent to an adoption of the child, to inherit from the child, and the right of the child to inherit from the parent.
Children's Services first opened a case in 2020 after an online school reported the children were barely logging on. The oldest, then 12, was essentially illiterate. That case closed, and another opened later that year after doctors found high lead levels in 4 of the children. The family was living on Honeysuckle Street in Cheshire at the time, and there was concern one child was being abused based on bruising on her thigh. That case, too, closed once the parents completed a case plan. The grandparents were living with the family for some of this period, but only Christina's name appeared in that first investigation.
Children's Services wasn't requesting permanent custody of the children back in 2020 and 2021, but they were on notice that it could be a possibility. Children's Services opened a case in 2020 after receiving a complaint from an online school that some of the children were supposed to be attending. Records showed the kids were barely logging on to online school and were essentially illiterate. The oldest at the time was 12. That case was closed and another was opened later that year after doctors found high levels of lead in 4 of the children's systems. They were living in this house on Honeysuckle in Cheshire at the time. There was a concern that one of the kids was being abused because the child had bruising on the back of her thigh. That case was closed after Gary Jr. and Elizabeth completed a case plan and they kept the kids. For some of that time that this was going on, the grandparents of the children, Gary Siders Senior and Christina Siders, were living with the family and the kids.
Look at the photos. A 2023 Facebook post and one believed to be from 2024 show Gary Sr. and Christina looking clean and healthy outside the house on Elmer Street. So what changed in just a few years?
Only Christina Siders' name came up in the investigation. Gary Sr. and Christina, they looked pretty good in this photo posted on Facebook back in 2023, and even in this photo, believed to be from 2024, posted by one of their daughters on Facebook, Gary Sr. and Christina looked clean and healthy. It was taken outside of the house on Elmer Street. So what happened in just a few years, or even a couple of years? Family members have claimed on social media that Gary Sr. and Christina didn't live like this, but apparently they were living like this. And one family member told a West Virginia TV station that they were kept at arm's length from the family. The prosecutor says the family was hiding Gary Jr. and Elizabeth's 16 children. But let's focus now on Gary Siders Sr. specifically, Grandpa.
Family members claim on social media the grandparents didn't live like that. One relative told a West Virginia TV station they were kept at arm's length from the family. The prosecutor says the family was hiding Gary Jr. and Elizabeth's 16 children. Focus on Grandpa.
You can tell when you look at the jail booking video that Gary Sr. is not well. He's in a wheelchair. And when he appeared in court, he didn't appear to totally get what was going on. His mental competency has been questioned. There are other questions about Grandpa, too. Physically, he didn't look great. Is it possible that Gary Siders Sr. was being neglected in some way? Charges have not been filed related to that possibility. The prosecutor has said that Gary Sr. and Christina were the only ones receiving government benefits in the house. A hearing date has been set on Gary Siders Sr.'s competency.
His jail booking video shows a man who isn't well, in a wheelchair, seemingly not grasping what was happening in court. His attorney, Dorian Baum, has significant concerns about his competency. He's frail, dealing with serious health issues. And there's another wrinkle. The prosecutor says Gary Sr. and Christina were the only ones in the house receiving government benefits. The only money coming in belonged to the grandparents. In his interview, Baum didn't hold back. This is a gentleman who has the least serious charges of all of them.
I want to turn now to two people who are representing one of the Siders family members, Gary Siders Sr. Dorian Baum has been here before, so welcome back, Dorian, and you are joined today by your co-counsel, John Getson. So, John, thanks for coming on with Dorian. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
No problem, Anjanette. Thank you.
Dorian, let's start with you. I want your reaction to the indictment, the charges that your client specifically faces. He was facing 16 counts of child endangering. They were felonies of the second degree. Those have now, been reduced. There's a sprinkling of misdemeanors and felony charges in there. Your reaction?
My reaction is this is exactly what I told you would be happening. As I said from the outset, we still haven't received discovery yet. I have been contacted by the prosecutor's office. We have to just do some administrative stuff on the back end in order to make sure the discovery gets delivered properly. But, once again, from the complaint to the amended complaint, now to the indictment, the charges have been reduced in number and in severity for Mr. Siders Sr. This is a gentleman who of all the four, he has the least serious charges of all of them. And also, when we're talking about the number of counts, I want to make sure that the public is not misinterpreting this as some sort of anything indicative of anything other than the number of people who are in the home. That's why the counts are the number that they are. This is still essentially alleging he was complicit in this one actor incident. But even with that, as we've talked about previously, he is still undergoing his competency evaluation, as well as if he's going to be found NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. I still have significant concerns about his mental health, about his mental faculties. Overall, I am basically in the same position today that I was yesterday, that I was the day before. I don't know how much Mr. Siders was involved in this, if he was involved at all. And frankly, I think we're talking more about someone who himself may have been victimized more than anything else.
How do you think?
Asked how his client could be a victim, he explained that an elderly man with declining mental faculties, whose benefits were being used to cover rent, utilities, and food, may have been unwillingly kept in this home without really any escape himself. He added he doesn't know how involved Siders Sr. was, if he was involved at all, and suggested this may be someone who was himself victimized. Picture a 73-year-old veteran whose benefits kept the household running, while he's the one who looks like he's been through a war. Meanwhile, his son and daughter-in-law face the most serious charges, and his own charges shrink. Because prosecutors can't prove involvement? Or because he was a victim too? Baum described a pretty steep mental decline that likely left Siders Sr. unaware of what was happening, with his own finances, his surroundings, even whether he was being cared for. Co-counsel John Getson pointed out that the Attorney General's press release carefully noted all charges are pending and everyone is presumed innocent, a sign, he suggests, that the state knows it's on thin ice. Baum made another sharp point. People generally don't commit crimes under the watchful eye of others who aren't committing the same crimes. If the state believed Gary Sr. knew about the sexual abuse, they'd have charged him with complicity. They didn't, only with conditions of the home.
In the indictment, but they were sharing living space. So it begs the question, do you believe your client may have had any knowledge of what was going on, at least the alleged, at this point, sexual abuse?
So I want to preface all of this with the first thing being that there is a gag order still in place as far as I'm aware. So I can't get too far into the weeds on that as it pertains to anybody else's charges or allegations. As you noted, they are still alleged. And of interesting note, Mr. Getson pointed this out to me the other day. At the very, very bottom of the Attorney General's most recent press release, he was very clear to note that all charges are pending and all people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So I want to make sure that's out there. But when it comes to Mr. Siders Sr., number one, he's currently being evaluated for competency. So if he's not competent, I think that really would bear some enlightenment on the question of whether he was knowing what was going on, whether he's knowledgeable of what was going on. Because clearly, if you're not competent or if you're NGRI, that in and of itself says essentially you're not aware of what's going on. Number two, I don't know, having not seen any of the discovery, I don't know where these alleged incidents were to have taken place. Just because they all live together, most people don't commit criminal acts if in fact they are committed under the watchful eye of other people who are not committing those same acts. So, if I'm going to go rob a bank, I don't typically walk right in the front door and be like, hey, I'm here to rob this bank, and then go take some money. There's usually some surreptitious conduct, there's some, hiding, whatever you're doing, etc. So when it comes to whatever Mr. Siders may or may not have known about, I think it's instructive that the state doesn't seem to believe so, because if so, they would have charged him under some sort of complicity action or complicity part of the statute. He simply wasn't charged. So at the very outset, it appears the state does not believe he had any knowledge, any involvement, or anything else. It appears from the charges that he was effectively charged for whatever they came to find in the house at those lesser charges of misdemeanors and lower level felonies.
That silence speaks volumes. So why did a house that family members insist was once kept clean end up in squalor, with Grandpa in a wheelchair? Baum poses it himself. If someone's faculties start slipping and the people around them let the house and the person deteriorate, that's someone who was arguably victimized.
You said you're getting your information, a lot of it from the community, social media. There's a photo out there that we've used several times where Gary Siders Sr. and his wife Christina, they look pretty good. It's from 2023, I believe. They look clean. They don't look dirty. There's even one with one of their daughters outside that home on Omer Street where they don't look bad at all. And I think that that's a more recent photo. And there have been people commenting that they didn't live like that. They didn't live in squalor, that they lived, they kept their house clean. So I guess, have you been able to glean any information about why their house fell into the condition that it did?
Well, I haven't personally, because again, as I said, I haven't talked to him for all those reasons previously discussed, but that itself sort of begs the question, doesn't it? If the house was found in this condition and these two individuals weren't individuals who generally kept their house like that and they didn't live in squalor and they were in clean conditions, your original question to me was, how could he potentially be a victim? Well, if you went from a person who had your faculties about you and as they started to slip, the people around you in your life allowed the house that you had kept clean and tidy and kept yourself clean and tidy, and they allowed everything to slip into that condition, that's, to me, seems like someone who was perhaps themselves victimized. But again, a lot of this is conjecture, and I hate to get into that conjecture game without seeing the discovery, seeing the evidence, but it does certainly tend to raise more questions than an answer.
We've all seen this pattern. Someone declines, and the people meant to care for them instead take their money and their home and let them fall apart. Even family outside the house reportedly noticed the change on social media, but they'd been kept at a distance, a form of control. Christina, the grandmother, faces her own questions. She was the one named in the earlier investigations, the one supposedly responsible for the kids. But she's elderly too, and living in that same house. Was she complicit or trapped alongside her husband? Here's what's unsettling. The prosecutor says Gary Sr. is being treated for a serious, undisclosed medical condition, one that could have bankrupted the county if he'd stayed in jail.
Right now, Gary Siders Sr., he's free on a signature bond. He's wearing a GPS monitor. The prosecutor has said he's not a threat to the public, but he is still getting treatment for a serious, undisclosed medical condition. That treatment, had he remained in jail, the cost of that could have bankrupted the county. So it must be something big. That's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.
He's now out on a signature bond with GPS monitoring, deemed no threat to the public. Is that a genuine safety call, or a way to dodge a costly medical bill? His attorney says they haven't even received discovery yet, meaning no one fully knows what Gary Sr. actually knew when he was released. This isn't just about one family. It's about a system that spots vulnerable people and looks away. Children's Services knew about the illiteracy, the lead poisoning, the bruising back in 2020, and still returned the kids. More children were born into that house afterward. More ended up in it. The grandparents, who arguably needed protection themselves, may have ended up used as pawns. The system failed the children and, possibly, the grandparents, and no one has been held accountable. A competency evaluation for Gary Sr. is coming, but those results can take weeks or months. Meanwhile, Gary Jr. sits in jail on $500,000 bail, and the grandparents are out receiving treatment for conditions no one's fully explained. We're told justice is being served. Are we so sure? Baum himself admits much of this is conjecture without having seen the discovery yet, but says it certainly tends to raise more questions than it answers. That's the point. Sealed records, competency evaluations, mountains of paperwork, all keeping us from a clear picture. The only people clearly punished so far are the ones charged with the sexual crimes, and even they're pleading not guilty. This case hits close to home. Watching an elderly man in a wheelchair, hearing his lawyer suggest he may not have even understood where he was, is hard not to take personally. It's easy to imagine a grandparent of your own in that position, benefits siphoned off, left to waste away while unspeakable things happened down the hall, and a system that just filed paperwork while it all fell apart. Here's where we're left. Gary Sr. is free. The county is moving toward permanent custody of the children, and the county, not the family, will likely cover years of therapy and recovery. Who answers for the years of neglect? Why did Children's Services keep returning children to a home they knew was failing them? Why were the grandparents' charges reduced? And is Gary Sr. really an innocent bystander, or part of something bigger no one wants to unpack? The questions keep piling up even as the case moves forward. It's easy to feel like every institution is meant to protect people here: police, courts, social workers. Let this go on far too long, and easy to wonder who's watching the vulnerable people in your own community right now. So, do you think Gary Siders Sr. is a victim, or part of the machine that let this happen? What do you think that sealed competency evaluation is hiding? If he really didn't know what was going on, who was actually running that house? Drop your thoughts below.